Welcome to the 2022 team preview of the New York Excelsior. I never thought I'd be rushing at a team who has yet to announce their full roster at this point in time, but time constraints have kind of left me with no other choice. We don't know the sixth man of the team yet, but whatever. The main core is already established. Screw it. We're gonna risk it for the biscuit. So that begs the question, are the NYXL in for a bounce back year? Let's discuss. Starting off with what they lost and gained, we do have the fact that the entire team ended up getting dismantled from the 2021 season with the exception of Flora. Flora was obviously a guy worth keeping around because the man just had a fantastic rookie year. After what we saw, I think the idea of building your future team around him is some sound logic. The question is though, did the NYXL miss out on keeping any other talented players? Well, I mean, yes and no, right? I think there were a couple of guys who definitely had big potential. One in particular that I was kind of hoping to see stay was Kalios. The man turned out to be quite the solid mid-season pickup. He instantly provided better results than that of Bianca and genuinely had a few awesome performances. Then obviously there's Jonek. Watching him leave behind his original team after all the history was a real bummer. The dude could still play, I'm being completely honest. He maybe lost a step or two as the competition around him got stronger, but he was usually reliable. Outside of those two though, I'd like to think that most of the guys on that team were not worth holding on to. The rest of the pack never showed much of anything. They had their moments, but I think that big performances were more so on the rare side. They were all expendable for one reason or another. And if you thought that only the players would come and go, you'd be gravely mistaken. With how inconsistent this group was, along with the failure to show development, coaches Squix and Why Not were released. And to add some extra cause for celebration, IMT, who technically wasn't a coach anymore, was finally relieved from his duties as well after years of criticism. If you've got a new roster, you might as well change up the coaching as well. All around, there are a lot of good moves here, and that basically wraps up the section of the NYXL's near complete house clean. Year 1 of the post-OG roster era was kind of a letdown. It wasn't a total failure at least though, as I think there were some valuable lessons that were learned, and they did find themselves a new star in Flora. Now it's just a matter of taking the next step. A team needed to be properly built around him so he isn't the only guy carrying the burden on a consistent basis. What the NYXL needed was a mix of proven stars and brilliant minds, and if you want my honest opinion, they definitely did that to a certain extent. The NYXL's 2022 roster as of this video is Gangnam Jin and Myungbong at support, Flora and Yaki at damage, and Kellen at the front line, plus one other person who has yet to be announced. The roster is small, but they're boasting a lot of talent. There's a lot to like here, but arguably a lot to dislike as well. Let me explain. In terms of why the roster is likable, they basically got 4 all-star potential players to accompany Flora in the starting lineup. Gangnam Jin and Myungbong make for a decent foundation at support. Both of them are proven playmakers, as seen by how they played back in 2020, but the only issue at this point is that last year did see them have a lot less relevance. Gangnam Jin played a bit passively at times, which is maybe something we can overlook seeing as Florida were struggling big time. As for Myungbong, I'm not exactly sure what went wrong. Maybe it was the increase in Baptiste play, or maybe it's because his team was better so there was less room for him to solo carry. It could be something else, but I'd like to think that both supports did show a bit of a decline. Nothing insane, but it was noticeable. It's nothing they can't overcome though, that's the good news. It's something to note. After what we saw in 2020, there's absolutely a chance that they could have just had nothing more than an off year. A change of scenery could be all it takes to get them back on the right track. And let me tell you, New York could be mighty dangerous if they figure it out. They each have certain strengths which make them valuable. Gangnam Jin, he's more of that stable type of playmaker, can be very dangerous, but he also plays the game very intelligently. But then you also have Myungbong, who plays the game more aggressively and he likes to pursue some of those big plays with some aggressive angles. It's a yin and yang type of deal. They balance each other out, which I think kind of makes them ideal partners in a way. I always tend to think of like the relationship that Violet and Moth had. It gives me similar vibes. But what's also cool is these two could definitely take turns playing the flex support position. If the NYXL need a BAP, maybe they call Gangnam Jin. But if they're looking for something more aggressive, then maybe they have Myungbong play the Ana or whatever it might be. New York is always going to have a solid option no matter what composition choice they go with, so that's cool. The two of them might synergize a lot better than people think due to their checks and balances, if you will, that come with their different playstyles. The only question now is, how do they handle potential main support duties that come their way? They fall in the exact same boat as your Violet Finns and Lastro Irises of the world. What can I expect here? neither one of them are exactly known for their main support play. They're known for their mechanics as flex support players. I have no idea what to think of the support line due to this one simple question. If they figure it out, then great. This team is equipped to deal with pretty much any situation. If not, this could be the thing that kind of holds them back from pursuing a championship or making a deep playoff run. If there's any hope for New York fans out there though, it's that Gangnam Jin does seem like he could have a decent transition into the main support role if they choose him to play it. It's always going to hurt to not see him on his usual hero pool, but the way he plays the game and his approach and everything just seems like it could translate to the other role. That intelligent and calculated mindset is something that a lot of all-time great main supports tend to have. His playstyle seems like it could work out, and I could see him finding mild success on like your Mercies and Breaks. But of course, this is all theory crafting at the end of the day. It sounds promising, but we really don't have any clue what to expect. Hopefully everything works out, as I'd hate to see this team flop because they made a poor choice with their backline. On a more positive note, Flora and Yaki are looking like one of the scariest DPS duos in the Overwatch League. Flora and Yaki are like a perfect blend of everything you'd ever want. They're both capable of taking over a game on any given day, and their hero pools don't overlap much at all, seeing as Yaki's a flex, and Flora's more so about the hit scan. They can make most combos work out really well just between the two of them. The only thing that they might struggle with is like double hit scan or double sniper, but that's kind of where I suspect their 6th player is going to come in. I'm assuming they're getting a 3rd DPS to solve that issue, seeing as every other team has at least 3 damage dealers. That's about the only time I don't see them dominating in the lineup together though. These two have just so much potential to take the league by storm this year. Yaki and Flora have fought uphill battles non-stop since last year. They'd carry as hard as humanly possible, but in a losing attempt. But now, they have each other this year to rely on, which means there's going to be less pressure on both of their shoulders, which could result in both of them playing even better. As we've seen in the past, those teams that can play pressure-free Overwatch tend to go far. At their best, both of these guys could be superstars. Yaki has already shown that ability 2 years in a row, and Flora is well on his way to that level if given better support, and he shows a bit of development in his game. Yaki and Flora could arguably go blow for blow with any damage line in the Overwatch League. They're an excellent foundation to center your entire roster around, no doubt about it. New York recognized how important DPS is looking to be heading into Overwatch 2, and they capitalized on an opportunity. My only hope now is that these two don't end up getting in each other's way. I'd assume this is unlikely, but you never know how a great player on a previously bad team is going to react to no longer being the only guy in the spotlight. Sometimes we see players just not perform at the same level after getting help or going to a different team. It's weird, but it happens. Again, it seems unlikely since Flora is a pretty special player, but I thought I'd bring it up since it definitely is a possibility. In general though, you have to feel pretty good about the NYXL DPS line. They're easily one of the most likable aspects of the entire team, if not the most, and it's not even close if you ask me. Now on to Tank though, which is quite interesting to say the least. For those who don't know him, Kellen is a relatively hyped up prospect from Korean contenders. He was known for his main tank play on notable teams such as Element Mystic and Talon Esports. He seemed like one of the most OWL-ready tank prospects available, so it's not a bad signing on New York's end. My personal opinion is that he's good, but not great just yet. He oftentimes did well in contenders, making nice plays on Winston and such, but I more so thought of him as somebody who played the game smart rather than making a giant impact. He stayed out of his own way and he provided that stability that his team needed. I think that there's some interest here with him, but I'm not totally in love just yet. I'm not sold, and I definitely think he has something to prove. But at least the foundation is present when you watch him play. That's a good step. If the coaching keeps him on the right track, he's going to be sitting pretty. And what's cool about Kellen's role on this team in particular is he doesn't have to be one of the main guys necessarily, which in a way kind of makes it more so like he's playing on Talon Esports still. So he really might just fit right in. Kellen doesn't need to be the hero. What the NYXL need from him is to play smart and reliably. That's something reasonable to ask for out of a rookie. Don't put too much pressure on him. But, unfortunately, there are other places where the pressure might start to build up. Just think about the idea of him being the one and only tank. I mean, come on. That's pretty tough. Can he really cover the entire tank class all by himself? Maybe he could have the DPS help with like Doom or whatever, but that's not that much. And if that wasn't enough, how far the NYXL could really go is going to depend on his development. If the NYXL were looking to get back into contender status this year, he needs to go above and beyond. League ready or not, that could be asking too much from a rookie. With characters like Zarya and Doomfist supposedly getting a good bit of playtime according to Custa, it goes without saying that he's got some adjusting to do. The good news is there are multiple people in the same situation as him though, which could mean that I'm overreacting to flexibility concerns. On the other hand, tank looks to be quite important. There might only be one now, but it still does feel like a big role. I have mixed feelings on how I see Kellen holding up. I'm not expecting much, but I do recognize his skill. I mean, he should be hovering at the average or above average level at the very least. My general consensus is that he has promise, but his impact does leave some questions. I'd love to see if he pans out. If he does, it's really going to benefit New York. But those are my general thoughts on the new look NYXL players. The general feeling is somewhat confident, but with tons of questions. However, this is not the only place where the NYXL would kind of make changes to their team, as they did end up upgrading their head coaching big time with the addition of Kuki. His resume and his experience just happens to trump why not in every way imaginable. It's just a solid overall coaching upgrade. He's already very accustomed to coaching young talent like this, as evident by his runaway and early Florida days, and then you have people like Flora and Kellen who are probably going to benefit as a result. If that wasn't enough, he's also got over 2 years of experience working alongside Yaki and Gangnam Jin, which goes all the way back to the runaway days, which is yet another bonus here. It's been assumed that Kuki joining New York was an instrumental way to get both Yaki and Gangnam Jin to join the team. They're all pretty close with one another, and I'm expecting morale and overall synergy to be pretty good out of them. And I think that their experience working together can only make the lives of everybody else on the roster easier. But of course, their chemistry alone can only take them so far. How is this team going to play as a total unit? My guess is pretty decent if all the playmakers can coexist. This especially again goes for that DPS line. If they prove to be a power duo and they get into a rhythm early on, then New York could end up winning a lot of games this year. The emphasis on DPS seems to be pretty huge here in the early stages of the game, the early impressions if you will, and these guys are going to be very hard to stop if they figure it out. It's crazy to think about because just Flora abusing Sojourn and maybe having Sombra in the mix as well, with Yaki just playing really good on everything, sounds so scary. Sadly though, I don't know if the rest of the team appears to match their type of energy. Kellen's a rookie with too many questions right now. I'm not expecting him to play way above and beyond his expectations as a consistent contributor. It's not fair to him. A lot of other teams have a solo tank simply with more experience, or they're rocking with 2 tanks to split up the responsibilities. I'm expecting Kellen to compete and be capable of playing above average. He could totally be like a playoff caliber player, but beyond that, I'm a bit uncertain. And those questions expand to support to a certain extent, I'd say. Aside from having to show they can still be elite, I'm a little scared that they just won't be as valuable as they would have been in Overwatch 1. From all accounts, support feels weaker than the other roles. These two were brought on to pop off with regularity, and it's concerning to think that this isn't something they'll be able to do consistently based off of the rumors. Once again referring to Custa's recent YouTube video where he kind of goes into a bit of detail about what he noticed from some Overwatch 2 scrims, high tempo is the name of the game currently. Slow-paced flex supports have been getting run over from dive comps in certain scenarios, and supposedly double flex support just isn't all that viable unless certain conditions or maps are met. So in a way, that puts these two at a disadvantage, just as it does with a lot of these other rosters rolling with 2 flex supports. If the more brawl-like supports get playtime, then I fear that Gangnam Jin and Myungbong just won't give you the value that they should. However, if aggressive play happens to be the norm and teams can get away with running their comfort picks, Myungbong could be quite effective as a flex support. He's not somebody who's afraid to take aggressive positioning, which supposedly in Overwatch 2 could be pretty rewarding if your timing is on. The results of the support line truly might depend on the day. TLDR if you want a quick review of the New York roster. Damage is the only place I have absolute confidence in. Let me make it clear though. There's not a single player on the New York roster that I dislike. In fact, I could see each and every one of them being a star. But in order for this to happen, they have to show me that their play isn't going to vary by the meta. They need to show me some consistency. And right now, they maybe just feel a little less dependable compared to some of those other rosters in NA because of all the questions. So they're still good, but maybe not mind-blowing currently. Speaking of NA, I think the fact that New York are back in the West this year instead of APAC should work to their advantage. There's more teams that they're very capable of beating over here, which definitely gives them solid odds of competing for the playoffs. On the topic of playoffs and results and whatnot, how about we now go on to the conclusion of this video with some predictions. My projection for the NYXL in 2022 is for them to finish as high as 5th place and as low as 12th place in the overall standings, and in the Western Conference, I believe they'll be in the range of 3rd through 8th. I'm pretty much putting them in that Houston range where it feels like they could be excellent, but also just okay. They just feel more questionable and not as complete compared to some of the favorites, which is why I think they would be lucky to crack the top 5 of the overall standings. I feel like those spots are more so reserved for the teams who are truly loaded. If the NYXL do manage to go that high, then you can assume that all their players have realized their true potential. Top 8 or maybe top 10, middle of the pack-ish feels about right for them currently. They could do pretty well in NA, but I think as you start to go up the ladder, the top of the West is filled with a lot of brutal competition that are around their level or even better. They could realistically beat most of the top teams in NA, but they could also lose to all of them pretty easily. It's so weird, it could go either way with them. They don't boast any insane advantages, but they also play a lot of teams who face the same disadvantages. We have quite a few teams in the exact situation as them. Things like clutch factor and the meta could be very telling on if this team makes the playoffs comfortably, or if they're fighting for their lives by the final week of play. I'd say I have decent confidence in the NYXL to be a playoff team. They have so much talent that I have a lot of respect for. When I say I don't dislike a single player on the roster, I mean it with every fiber of my being right now. It feels like any of their members could make you pay if you don't respect them, and when you add in the fundamentally sound coaching, you have a potential recipe for success. They've got to at least be capable of being middle of the pack, right? But how much further can they take it? That's the big question. This team definitely has their work cut out for them if they intend to be elite. My expectations for the NYXL are to be decently high rated in NA, who maybe have an early round playoff exit. I'd like to say they're capable of a little more, but it's just not something I feel comfortable saying in their current state. I'm pretty excited to watch them play, but there's so much to prove still. It's going to be a fun year nonetheless though. Yaki and Flora should be awesome. Should be a nice change of pace compared to last year, I'll tell you that much. Let's see how much further they can improve. But until then, that's where we're going to be leaving things for now. I hope you all enjoyed today's discussion. If you did, it would mean so much to me if you could hit like and subscribe and make sure to leave a comment as well. The 2022 season is just around the corner, and trust me when I say that I've got a lot of exciting content planned, so be sure to hit the bell button so you don't miss out on any of the exciting action. And as always, thank you all so much for watching my content. I appreciate you so much, and until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.